Let's make sure Tammy's connected. I think her audio is still connecting. I know Zoom was having problems yesterday. I don't know.
Yeah, it completely shut down yesterday.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's something I can do to help with her. Tammy, I don't know if you could hear me, but you may want to log back out and log in again and see if that doesn't help you connect your audio. She probably can't hear me. We'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everybody for joining us this morning. I know there's a few people that are going to be late this morning, but we'll get started. And just if you wouldn't mind, stay muted. And if you do have a question, please put that question in the chat box. Brandon's going to go through a slide presentation with us this morning and then take questions afterwards. So you can put a question in the chat box at any point in time during his presentation. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathy Grace, who is our Vice President, and have her introduce Brandon.
Good morning, everybody. We are thrilled to have Brandon Ellis with us today. He's a Mullins native, and after 6 years in Marion, joined as the Regional South Carolina Emergency Management Director for the coastal and center regions of the state. And then following Sam Hodges' retirement last year, he joined us on September 16th, immediately after Hurricane Dorian. So pleased to introduce Brandon Ellis.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here without doing too much, losing anything important. So let's see. Can you all see the slide deck presentation now?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. Well, as Kathy mentioned, my name is Brandon Ellis. I'm the Director of Emergency Services for Georgetown County. My day-to-day responsibilities include the Emergency Operations Center and Emergency Management here on High Market Street. And I'm also responsible for overseeing and managing our 2 county fire and EMS services at Georgetown County Fire EMS, as well as Midway Fire Rescue. So I work very closely with them on a daily basis, as well as our very small staff here at the Emergency Operations Center. Small during a routine day-to-day operation, but we tend to grow whenever there's an event. And we'll talk a little about that as we go through the slides. So let me navigate over here and see if we can get, there we go. All right, so today we'll just talk about a few key points, the 2020 season outlook and our current status and where we are with that, as well as how we do emergency operations here, you know, kind of an overview, 60-second overview of our Emergency Operations Center. What hazards are associated with hurricanes? There's some misconceptions on how we actually prepare for hurricanes. So we'll talk about a few of those, as well as your personal preparedness and then your business preparedness, since some of you are likely business owners and whatnot. So the 2020 hurricane season, we recently received an update from NOAA. Actually, as you can see by the graphic on the screen, they were so kind to give me the doom and gloom update on our anniversary of August the 6th. So my wife was thrilled that that was our anniversary information. So as you can see, above normal chances of an active season, or above normal season, I'm sorry. There's an 85% chance that we're going to have an above normal hurricane season. And I think that's playing out just as the forecast has been given to us. We're seeing that activity, and we're seeing that activity boost over the past couple of weeks as we kind of anticipated. The current forecast calls for 19 to 25 named storms. So far, we've had 16, so we're chugging right along in that mindset with the forecast. 7 to 11 of those are forecast to be hurricanes, with 3 to 6 of those hurricanes being major hurricanes of 115 miles per hour or greater, also known as Category 3 or greater. So how does this shape up to what the original forecast was for this year? The original forecast for this year only gave us a 60% chance of an above normal season. So you can see they've increased that by 25% based off of atmospheric conditions and meteorological conditions that we're seeing with, I won't bore you with the wordy nerdy stuff of weather, but some environmental factors of the El Nino conditions over in the Pacific are leading to that forecast of an above normal season here. So you can see the increases there. Named storms, originally they were calling for 13 to 19. Now we're looking at 19 to 25. Hurricanes, they were originally forecasting 6 to 10, and we see, that's up to 7 to 11. And fortunately, if there's any glimmer of good news in this forecast, it is that the total forecast for major hurricanes has not changed. So we'll take that as kind of the silver lining, I guess you could say. Where are we at so far? As we were previously discussing before this started, 16 named storms. So we're 60% through 60% of the database this year for names, and we're barely halfway through the season. So we're looking at activity is going to increase. We know that, and right now the Louisiana coast is actually bracing for the impacts of Hurricane Laura later today into this evening. So they're going to be getting ready for a rather sporty event down there over the next few days. All the highlighted names have already taken place. Some of those are easier to pronounce than others. I don't know why they make some of these so difficult, but next up on the list is Nana. And if I had my guess, she's probably going to be bad if she does form somewhere just because of namesake. But nonetheless, we're prepared and we're ready to address this. Commonly get a question of, well, what do we do if we run out of names that have been preset? We then transition over to the Greek alphabet, and we've done that in the past several times actually in some of our more active seasons. So don't be surprised if you see Wilfred come and go at the end, and we have to transition to that Greek alphabet. But we're going to be cautiously optimistic and hope that we don't have to get that deep into the alphabet this year and that the forecast is wrong. Let's talk about where we are in the season. As you know, hurricane season begins June 1st. Obviously, we had 2 storms prior to hurricane season this year. And one of those actually impacted South Carolina, Bertha. It came in on a Wednesday morning and brought us some rain, popped up just off the coast, and brought us some rain and wind and was out of here by lunchtime. So we were very thankful for that. ECASIS came in a couple weeks ago. You're probably more familiar with that. We had a lot more lead time and preparation for it. Unfortunately, the subtle jog of 10 to 15 miles to the east as it approached the coast was very beneficial for us and lessened our impacts. Not so much for our friends to the north of us, as close as Cherry Grove experienced major impacts, as well as our coastal partners up in North Carolina. So any deviation in that track from the National Hurricane Center can spell out major changes in the impacts that we can anticipate. So we take all of that into consideration whenever we're planning and preparing and advising the public of what to do. The graph on your screen shows the peak of hurricane season. We're rapidly approaching that on September the 10th. So we are, as I like to call it, we are in bingo zone right now. And we are, very actively monitoring what's going on in the Atlantic Basin on multiple times a day. And we'll continue that, as you can see, once we get to that September peak, then it starts slowly transitioning down. But we all know that we've definitely had storms in October and November that have impacted South Carolina in recent history. So don't be fooled by this graphic. Don't let your guard down. and don't back off of your preparedness initiatives. So we talked about the Emergency Operations Center, which is where I am today. I'm hoarded up in my office right now, and I apologize for any shininess off of my bald head, but the more that you do this job, the less hair you have. So our Emergency Operations Center is located on High Market Street. We're co-located with the City of Georgetown Police Department on their complex. We are on the west side of the building. We are also co-located with the Georgetown County 911 Center. So we have a great partnership there on a day-to-day basis, but it also provides dividends whenever we're in an emergency situation because we have that constant communication mechanism in place. There's a photo here of our Emergency Operations Center on a sunny day, as we call it. We can staff up to around 65 folks in that Operations Center pre-COVID, obviously, and we can coordinate all of our response and recovery operations from this room. This room was built with 8-inch reinforced concrete walls, so we should be able to weather pretty much any storm that we face. Although we do have alternative locations where we can bug out to if we need to, if the storm is too intense or if we experience significant damage here. Our primary goal is response coordination, logistics management, and information sharing. We do a lot of consequence analysis in the EOC because we have the high level folks there that can make decisions on the fly based off of the situation that is before us. Our operations this year have obviously been changed and hampered as everything else that we are accustomed to on a routine basis has been influenced by COVID. Our operations have also been influenced by COVID. So we have taken a more virtual approach, and we have a mechanism in place to where we can actually respond to emergencies and disasters in a virtual posture and still maintain common operating picture and coordination with our supporting stakeholder agencies. This was slightly tested there in our most recent storm, Hurricane Ellis, but we do have mechanisms in place if we were to have a greater threat from a more highly impactful storm. We can actually pull in certain folks to this room and still allow for social distancing and meet the needs of our response community. Kind of an idea of what our timeline looks like related to a tropical cyclone response. We operate under 3 operating conditions or OPCON levels. Day-to-day operations, we are at operating condition 3, which is a steady state. It's pretty much daily operations, no real enhancements of our readiness level, and we're monitoring the situation. Operating condition 2 is an enhanced awareness, and we have a timeline that working into the state hurricane evacuation plan. This would happen about 72 hours before an evacuation is slated to be initiated. The uniqueness of COVID, we remain at operating condition 2 right now in our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So it really kind of increases our readiness on a daily basis because we already have some things in place. If we had to stand up for a tropical cyclone, we'd be able to do so in a timely manner. And then operating condition 1 is when we usually transition to this posture just before our evacuation is initiated, 24 hours or so before the evacuation starts, so that all of our key players and supporting stakeholders are in place and ready to support the needs of the community once the evacuation is initiated. So now we're going to talk about hurricanes. I know that's the flavor of the day. Everyone is very interested. Obviously, it's been an active season. It's going to continue to be an active season based off of everything that we're seeing. So we'll touch on a few key points. Hurricane hazards. We have a lot of folks that move into the area and they're not really familiar with what all hurricanes bring. They think winds. Everyone thinks winds. Well, winds are one consideration of many that we take into account. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the Saffir-Simpson scale and some of the misconceptions there, as well as preparedness, how evacuations take place, and then what you need to consider from a reentry perspective. So our hurricane hazards, quite frankly, they stretch from our most coastal portions of the county to our most inland portions of the county, and they all have a different flavor depending on where you are. Storm surge and storm tides. If you've been along the coast in the past several years, you've experienced storm surge, storm tides along the immediate coastline. We saw the impacts during our most recent storm up in the Garden City, Murrells Inlet area, where we had about a 2 to 3 foot storm surge. And that's above ground level water, and it's coming up on top of the tide. So we saw some immediate coastal flooding. We can also see inland flooding. And sometimes this can be the result of a secondary event from the initial hurricane. We've seen that in years past as well, with 2015 with the historic floods, as well as with Hurricane Matthew in 2016, and then again with Hurricane Florence in 2018. Inland flooding is becoming more and more prevalent as a result of these tropical cyclones. So it's no longer just a coastal issue. High winds are a given. Any tropical type storm, we're anticipating high winds. It's just depending on the magnitude of the storm, how severe those winds will be. Tornadoes are also a big issue, especially if we take that right front quadrant where the bulk of that rotation is and that storm's anatomy. If that impacts our area, we're going to see an enhanced risk for rain-wrapped tornadoes that spawn from these tropical cyclones and hurricanes. And then, even if a storm passes well offshore, we're going to still see impacts, riptides, coastal erosion, things of that nature. So just because a storm is striking Bermuda, don't let your guard down if you go out to the beach. We try to be very proactive in sharing riptide information with our community as well as our visitors, so that they're aware, because it is a hazard that a lot of folks unfortunately find themselves in, and in some situations sadly they pass away because they get caught in a rip current and they don't know how to navigate that. So those are some of the hazards that we do see on a daily basis or on a routine basis with our tropical cyclone experiences. Saffir-Simpson scale. I'm sure many of you look at that and say, well, what category storm is it? Depends on how bad it's going to be. Well, on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see in the green writing, these are the only things that the Saffir-Simpson scale take into account, and it's winds. That scale only takes into account wind speed. It does not take into account any of the other hazards that are listed in red on the right-hand side. Gusts, tornadoes, storm surge, angle of approach, the secondary impacts of riverine and inland flooding. These are all things that we have to consider as a storm's approaching. Depending on the angle of approach of a storm, a Category 1 hurricane can have just as much of an impact from a storm surge inundation as a Category 4 or 5 hurricane can. So it's really all about the dynamics associated with the individual storm, and we take each storm. We review the characteristics of that storm very carefully in conjunction with our partners at the National Weather Service and National Hurricane Center, so that we can make the best and most informed decisions to provide to the community. Talk about preparedness for a moment. We have a strong initiative going on at the county level. Our 2020 personal preparedness initiative was railroaded by the 2020 COVID pandemic. So we've had to get creative and reach out in more of a virtual format such as this, instead of having our traditional in-person outreach events. But our 2020 initiative is don't wait until it's too late, prepare today. And we're trying to encourage Georgetown County residents to prepare now while it's a sunny day, while it's a beautiful day out, and while I'm looking on my security camera, it's actually gray and rainy here in Georgetown. But, when we're not under the stress of a storm, take the initiative today to prepare yourself, prepare your family, prepare your business, and just take your personal preparedness personal, and make sure that you have a plan in place. Later this week, we'll be releasing our preparedness toolkit, which is a 4-page downloadable document that PDF fillable, and it's printable, so you can scratch it in with a pen or pencil. It's going to be a document that's going to be made available on our county website to help folks prepare. Just jotting down that simple information, building that supply kit, as you can see the recommended contents here on the right-hand side of the screen, and just ensuring that our residents don't let their guard down and that they're prepared. We take this very personal, and we want to ensure that everyone in Georgetown County has a plan in place in the event that we, not if, but when we do experience another storm of, say, the magnitude of Hugo or even Katrina, because it's not if, it's when. From a business perspective, you want to take care of certain things there as well. Phase 2 of our preparedness initiative will include a business preparedness toolkit that we'll be pushing out as well. We're working in coordination with our economic development office on that. Many of you may know Brian Tucker. He's a great partner here, and we work closely with him during disasters, and he coordinates with Chamber of Commerce and different folks throughout his networking. One thing you want to do is ensure that your assets are protected from a business perspective. And that doesn't just include your facility and your equipment. It's also your personnel. You want to ensure that they have a preparedness plan in place, that they are, taking care of themselves, and that, when the time does come for you to reopen, that they are able to come back to work and actually, fill their job role. We're all going to be impacted by a disaster if it happens here. And we just need our workforce as well to be prepared so that they can take care of themselves at home, as well as return to work when the time is necessary. Build your emergency plan for your business. You want to make sure that you have all of the pre-storm items taken care of. Like I said, this toolkit is going to have a checklist that you all can consider. You want to review your insurance policies. You want to do that both on a personal and a business perspective. Make sure you know what's covered in your insurance policy. Don't assume that you have coverage for certain things such as flood insurance. That is one thing that does require a separate policy. And some people are misled by that and believe that, oh, I live at the coast, so my insurance covers everything. Not the case, I promise. And then you want to prepare for the continuity of operations. After we have that big event and your business is impacted, how are you going to come back? How are you going to prepare for the new normal in a post-storm environment and modify your service delivery and modify the way that you do business? We are personally experiencing that at the county due to COVID-19. We've taken this opportunity to better our emergency continuity of operations, continuity of government plans through our lessons learned through telework and different things of that nature. And we've identified gaps that we need to work on so that we do, if we do experience one of these catastrophic events, we are able to bring county government and operations back online in a more streamlined manner. How many of you know, well, I forget we're virtual, but know your zone? If you know what hurricane evacuation zone you live in, it's essential. It's the first step in being prepared for a tropical cyclone when you live along the coast. We have 3 zones in Georgetown County: Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C. The vast majority of our publicly owned streets are labeled with the appropriate hurricane evacuation zone. If you look on the top of the public street signs in an evacuation zone, there should be a color-coded wrapping: red for A, yellow for B, and orange for C. This was a project completed by an Eagle Scout years ago, and it's one way that you can identify what hurricane evacuation zone you live in. Another way is going to the South Carolina Emergency Management Division website at scemd.org, and you can search for the Know Your Zone page, type in your address, it'll geolocate your address, and it'll tell you exactly which hurricane evacuation zone you live in. So if you're not sure, go there, and it's easy, 1, 2, 3 click, and you're able to identify your zone. Once we recommend an evacuation to the governor's office, we will provide which zones we recommend, and ultimately the governor's office has that authority to make that decision, and they'll announce those hurricane evacuation zones appropriately. So as long as you know which zone you live in, you'll know if you need to evacuate or if you just need to shelter in place. So why do we evacuate? We often get a lot of grief. Well, that storm wasn't that bad, or it's only a category 1, or things of that nature, or only a category 2. I was here for Hugo. That's my favorite one. That we were here for Hugo and we survived. We were okay. We'll be here. We'll be fine with this little storm. 88% of our fatalities nationwide related to hurricanes or tropical cyclones are due to water. So it's not wind. 88% of the fatalities are related to water in some fashion, with the vast majority of those being related to storm surge. So our evacuation recommendations are, about 90% based on what impacts are we going to have from storm surge, inland flooding, things of that nature that are directly associated with the event. And those are the driving points, and I guess you could say the steering currents, if you're going to talk tropical, for what direction we go in with our evacuations. So that process is initiated locally. We start having those conference calls with the governor's office. We make a recommendation based off of our local knowledge, what the storm is presenting at that point. And this is well in advance. It takes 48 hours to evacuate the largest populations along the South Carolina coast. And it takes us a little less time than that, because obviously we aren't as populated as some of the other areas. But if a full coastal evacuation is ordered, we have to do it early to support the other areas. The governor makes the ultimate decision based off the recommendations and feedback from locals and other sources that he utilizes. And then we initiate that process. I mentioned know your zone earlier. Make sure you know what hurricane evacuation zone you live in. Also know your evacuation route. That's pretty easy in Georgetown County, because if you live on the Waccamaw Neck, there's really one way in and one way out. And if you live up anywhere south of Murrells Inlet, you're going to have to take US 17 through Georgetown, down to 521, over to 261, and then to 378 and go towards Columbia. And we do have some alternate routes in place if we experience extreme loading on that, which would take you up to Black River Road through Browns Ferry, and then over to 378 in Johnsonville, and you then go to Columbia via that route. I say all that to say this: plan ahead so that you know where you're going, and if you want to go to a specific location that is not Columbia, you need to evacuate before the evacuation order is in place. Because once that evacuation order is in place, you have to follow that prescribed route that'll take you to Columbia, and then you can venture elsewhere from there. It's simply just to help manage that process and make the whole process more efficient. But like I said, if you do want to evacuate, leave early and go where you want to go. That way you can pick your destination of choice versus being told where you must travel. Have that location pre-identified, communicate that with your friends and family so that they can account for you. And that way you have everything taken care of well in advance. If you do determine that you need to go to a sheltering location, if you don't have an area of safe haven, sheltering operations will look a lot different this year due to COVID-19. We will have reduced shelter capacity because of social distancing, but based off of our analysis of previous storms over the past few years, we are more than confident that we'll have enough space in Georgetown County to meet the need that has been presented over the past 4 to 5 years during evacuations. Once folks arrive at a shelter, they will be pre-screened through temperature checks, questionnaires, the typical COVID questioning that you see. And if it is determined that someone is suspected of being COVID positive, they will be sent to an isolation area. Once in that isolation area, it'll be coordinated for them to be transported to another location for non-congregate type sheltering. If you are in a shelter location, you will be required to wear PPE. It'll be provided, personal protective equipment, mask, and such, and social distancing guidelines will be strictly adhered to. So following the storm, this is probably, folks are reluctant to evacuate because they don't want to wait to come back. But once an evacuation order is given, we start planning for that reentry process and how that's going to look. And we really don't know until the wind stops blowing and we can start doing our preliminary damage assessments exactly how bad the situation is. So our damage assessment team and our first responders feed us information back that will help facilitate and coordinate that reentry piece. And we're going to do that with the public safety in mind. We obviously don't want to bring folks back into an environment that's littered with debris and down power lines and no utilities. So, because then we just create another disaster within a disaster at that point. So we will strictly, coordinate that. We'll put out information, just adhere to those instructions that local authorities are putting out. And it may be that, we can't allow reentry because the counties that border us can't allow folks to come through their county because of infrastructure damage. So we're close coordination with that. If you do own a business, I would encourage you to go to the South Carolina Business Reentry Certification website. You can Google that. It'll take you to a page on the South Carolina Emergency Management Division where you can register your business for reentry. And they'll take your information and provide you with that reentry documentation that would be needed post-event to allow you to come back in if you're not a resident of the county. A few resources that we make available. Obviously, our hurricane guide for Georgetown County is available, as well as the State of Emergency Management's hurricane guide for 2020. They update theirs every year. Ours is pretty static. It's just a more micro level document specifically for Georgetown County. You see the South Carolina Emergency Manager app is available as well on your smartphone, whether it be iPhone or Android. You can go to your respective app stores and download that app. It's free of charge. Highly encourage you to do that. Allows you to build your plan and get preparedness information as well as push alerts when necessary. And also just follow us on our social media platforms. We push out a lot of information, especially during an event. Our public information staff will take control of our departmental Facebook page and Twitter accounts at that point and push out official information. So follow us for, not only your emergency information needs, but as well as day-to-day general emergency management related information. As I mentioned, our initiative this year is don't wait until it's too late, prepare today. So I encourage all of you to do that. And that wraps up pretty much everything I had. So I'll be subject to any questions that there may be.
Thanks, Brandon. We appreciate all that information, and we do have a couple of questions. Let me just open up the chat box. So Kathy asked, how has EOC operations changed with the arrival of coronavirus?
So we've developed what we call minimal staffing requirements. We've identified key personnel that we will have in the Emergency Operations Center, and it's going to be a scalable type roster that we can put together based off of the event. Obviously, for a tropical cyclone, we'll have this group, but if it's a hazardous material incident or something of that nature, a different type scenario, we can facilitate a different group of folks. But we have those core individuals that will actually be present in the room. As I mentioned earlier, we usually staff with about 65 folks. Right now, our max staffing will be around 10 per shift. So we'll allow for social distancing. We'll do pre-screening, temperature checks and questionnaires and things like that, as well as have PPE available and implemented in the actual Emergency Operations Center room. With that, all those other folks who would typically be boots on the ground right across the table from us, we will be utilizing our virtual format. It's called Palmetto EOC. It is a common operating software that the state provides to all the counties and state agencies to utilize. So it'll give us a virtual platform to operate and conduct our emergency operations basically seamlessly, like we're still sitting right across from each other.
Can you email the personal and business toolkits to PILBA so we can send it out to all of our members?
Sure. Yes. Once we publish the personal toolkit later this week, I'll send it out to you. And the business toolkit is still being developed, but it's nearing completion. So once it's completed, we'll get it out as well and make sure that you all can share that.
Okay, that'd be great. And can you type into the chat box the website address where the businesses can go to register their business?
Yeah, I'll have to pull it up. Maybe
or you can email that and I'll add that to the email when we
Sure.
send out the toolkits. That'd
Sure.
be awesome.
And that'll be it's included in the toolkit as well. And it's
okay.
a little blurb about that process.
Okay, great. Tammy's asking if your business owner is a resident of the same county the business is in, do you still need a business reentry certification do the staff members need any special certifications?
It would still be a good idea to, especially if you don't live at your business location. Reentry can be so tricky that we could isolate it to the whole county, or we could even do like we had to do in, I think it was Hurricane Matthew, when the reentry process was scalable. For the first day, the Waccamaw Neck was still isolated based off of power, because there were power lines down and things of that nature on Highway 17. Because trust me, I wanted to get back up to my property and make sure that my house hadn't blown away. But then the next day, once those areas were cleared, actually it was just the town of Pawleys Island that was isolated and shut off from reentry. So, it may be where there's a scalable approach. And if you live in Georgetown and your business is on the Waccamaw Neck or vice versa, it still would be a good idea to register it. And that way you have that documentation just in case it is required to get back into that area.
Right.
And do staff members need any special certifications?
They will. You'll get a document when you do that registration, and you can just print copies of it for your staff as well and provide. My wife is a pharmacist, and she has her paperwork folded up in her glove box, so that whenever the time comes, she can go back to work.
Great. Anybody else have any questions?
No, this has been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Brandon, for the time that you gave us today, and thank you for letting us record the session so we could post it on our YouTube channel. And we'll look forward to getting the toolkit so we can send that out to all of our members. So,
absolutely, thank you for the opportunity. I thank everyone for their attendance, and like I said, just push everyone to take their preparedness personal so that we can take care of ourselves while the sun's out, and that way when the rain comes, we're prepared and ready to go.
great.
Definitely. Okay.
Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.